Good afternoon, everybody. It's Impaired with the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District. Just going to wait a few more minutes for attendees to join our meeting here this afternoon. So just hang in there with us for a few more minutes. I'm just going to give it another minute. We don't have too many attendees.
I got it. Thank you. And I am muted. Byron, you can't hear me, can you?
I can hear you.
Oh, crap. You got to mute me. Sorry.
I'm just going to give another 30 seconds and we can start. Still only have a few attendees in at the moment. All right. Not a very popular WAC meeting here today, but I think we can get started so we can all get out of here on time. Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Myron Borchitz. I'm the Watershed team leader for the Rocky River area. I want to welcome you to our second Watershed Advisory Committee meeting for 2021. We decided to have a virtual meeting today, so thank you for joining our virtual meeting so we can all stay safe during this pandemic. Just a quick agenda for today. We're going to feature presentation is going to be on Plum Creek fish relocation project, which is something that we started this year. And then George is going to give us an update on the strategic support. Michael Blair will give us an update on the Rocky River Master Plan. Janet will give us an update on the inspection and maintenance updates and the design. Christina will give us an update on the inspection and maintenance program, and Janet will give us an update on design and construction. With that, I want to introduce our director, Frank Greenland, and he's going to just give us a couple of highlights that he wants to mention to you at this meeting. Frank?
Okay, and I want to thank everyone for attending, especially on a Friday afternoon. We have a good presentation, and I think Justin Tellup's presentation on fish translocation in Plum Creek is it's a neat project, and we'll see if it's a successful project, in the next few years. But it's a different aspect of stormwater management in terms of improving the biological community in a watershed. So he's got some great work going on. Same with George. Well, all the presentations are good, but I really want to highlight George's presentation and encourage the member communities to think hard about potentially utilizing our resources to continue to help solve local stormwater problems. We have all the master plans are essentially complete. So the computer models for the regional stormwater network are in place and will be continually updated. George is going to continue to oversee that. We would like to extend the regional models into the local level through agreements and discussions with the communities. So George will give an overview of some work that's going on in Brook Park, but this is something I really think the community should think hard about. It's a great use of your community cost share dollars, and we can extend our models to try and figure out how we can best solve local problems. So George will give that overview. I wanted to mention that the Board of Trustees has adopted a new rate structure for 2022 through 26. Included in that 5-year rate structure is an increase of the stormwater fee of 4.2% annually over the next 5 years. That helps us generate a little bit more for design and construction efforts. And now that the planning is essentially done on the broad scale, we'd really like to start accelerating design and construction efforts across the service area. So that fee increase helps a little bit with that. I did want to mention the MCIP, Member Community Infrastructure Program grants. So it's different, a little different, but still within that 5-year rate picture is a $15 million a year commitment to that grant program, which I think has been extremely successful at solving local sanitary issues, basement flooding, failing septics, and a whole host of other things. So we have awarded the 22 grants, and hopefully, pending board approval, it's $15 million a year for the next 5 years. So that's really good. This is a community cost share slide. All I want to say is there's money in the kitties in many communities. So I really want to, encourage you to use this money. And a lot of you are, and putting it to good purpose. When George is presenting, I think this is an opportunity to use these funds as well to start really refining local stormwater modeling to best solve problems on the local level. And George will be coordinating that work going forward. And I really think that's our next step forward in tackling this stormwater issue across our region. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming and on to the presentations.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, so as Frank mentioned, the community cost share slide, it's up now. Mike, if you just want to go back. Just wanted to update you and let everybody know that, as of August 31st this year, our balance was $32.5 million. We have $22.5 million available for spending. So if you have a project that you want to apply for, the money's in the bank, get your application in to your watershed team leader so we can help you move forward with improving those local systems. And then just underneath it is a little graph showing what we spent every year since 2016. Last year was obviously a slower year due to COVID, but we're on track for spending close to $9 million this year on community cost share. Thanks. Next. Just a quick update on the local sewer system evaluation studies that we have going on. For us here on the Rocky River, we're basically looking at the Southwest Interceptor study, which is on the west side of your map. We are in the final community report phase now. We are finishing the review of the community reports. We are basically setting up over the next 2 months meetings with each community to make sure that they are happy with what's in their final community report. Once you get the reports, there'll be a 2-week review period for you, after which the team leader will set up a meeting with you so we can get feedback, and then we're going to finish this up. We want to really get these done by the end of the year for you. Next. Just a quick update on the stormwater fee credit policy manual. We are going to be doing some updates to the policy manual. I just wanted to go over 6 points that we are looking at updating. The first one is the water quality. We're looking at the peak flow credits that can be applied to impervious areas. Currently, areas that didn't drain to the stormwater control measure was not eligible for the credit. We are looking at changing that and making them eligible for the credit if the regional stormwater control measure was designed large enough to include all those sublots. So this is an example here where the area in red does not drain to that area, but the pond was designed to accommodate that area. So it's a little bit over-designed. And so these sublots in the future will be able to apply for the credit. Next. The second one that we are looking at updating is specifically for the municipalities. So for the municipalities that have an MS4 stormwater management program in place and has a valid MS4 MPDS permit, if your area that you're being charged for example, this area here, which is the community center in Macedonia, they are paying a stormwater fee for their impervious area around their community center. So they will be able to get a 25% credit for this if they have a qualifying stormwater control measure. Next. The third one, credit eligibility. So if more than one owner is using a stormwater control measure, and they can show that they have shared responsibility for maintenance and inspection, then they can get also credit for this, for that stormwater control measure. The next one that we will be updating is an expected credit for applicants to get a credit for their green infrastructure grant projects that they are implementing. We are going to fast track that a little bit. We have seen that some of the green infrastructure projects that's gone in has not applied for the credit program. So we want to help them to apply for the credit program. So we are going to write that into our process. Fifth change that we want to highlight is credit renewal dates will be limited from May 1st to December 31st. And this is just because nobody wants to, or is hopefully going to do any inspections when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. So we are limiting the inspection periods from May 1st to December 31st for your credit reports. And then lastly, there will be some other administrative updates in the credit policy manual, but we will highlight those for you. These top 5 ones were just the ones that we really wanted to highlight to make you aware of these things coming down the line. Next. Also just wanted to quickly touch base on the report, the flood tool. This year, after each rain event, the Watershed team leader was sending you out a email, not only giving you the findings for what the storm event was and how we would be following up in the regional system, and reminding you to let us know if you see something that we can address it as quick as possible. But also we sent you this storm report flood tool link. Before it was something that you had to enter with using your ArcGIS username and password. That seemed to be a little bit hard for everybody to do. So what we did is we just created an HTML, basically a website. So anybody in the community, not in the community, in your departments, in your engineering department, service department, or whoever you have that receive the flooding reports, can actually just go onto the website and enter their data as they're taking the call. So that way we are making it as streamlined, as easy as possible for you to report the flood events that you have. Basement flooding, yard flooding, and street flooding are the 3 areas that we're looking at. I'm happy to come out and work with your staff to familiarize them with the website and with the tool. Just let me know if you want me to come out, and even if you're in another service area, Donna and Jeff would be happy to come out and help you with that. This information, we just ask you not to share the web link with the general public, just so we can have some quality control with the data going in. You'll also see that you can't generate reports out of this. If you want reports, you have to just email me, and I'll have our GIS department then generate the report for you. It was just a way to do some quality control on the data that we receive. Next. Another update is we have a new face, a new mark, a new brand. So we've updated our brand a little bit. You'll see that we have a standardized font and color spectrum now. Next. If you have to update any of your documents that you have our logo on, this will be the logo that we'll give you for a dark background. Next. And this will be the logo for a white background. Next. And these are the prime colors for our new brand. If you want any of this information or the branding information, feel free to email me, and then I'll get that information over to you as soon as possible. So anywhere where you use the Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District's logo, please let me know so I can get you the new updated brand information. This map here is your 3 Watershed team leaders, Donna Friedman, Jeff Jowett, and myself. Just to familiarize yourself, we are here to help you and assist you in any way possible, so don't hesitate to give us a call. Next. Any questions? Questions for the day? This here is a picture of Snell Road earlier this spring, where we had some unfortunate flooding of Snell Road. Right. Next up is Justin. He's our environmental compliance inspector 2, and he's going to give us a great presentation on how we are using biological services to identify water quality in our streams. Thanks, Justin.
All right, thank you, Myring, and thank you everybody for having me. Again, my name is Justin Tellup. I'm with the Water Quality and Industrial Surveillance section here with the Sewer District. Go ahead, next slide. And I'm going to give you guys an overview of a project that we really started planning last fall, where we're going to try to restore the biological integrity of Plum Creek, which really the only part that's left is the fish community. So we're going to be translocating fish up into Plum Creek from the Rocky River in hopes to restore the water quality goals. First, give you guys some background on Plum Creek. It's the headwater stream to the west branch of the Rocky River. Really starts down in Brunswick or flows through Columbia Township and goes into the Rocky River right there in downtown Olmsted Falls. So we are responsible for the lower 3.6 miles for the stormwater management program. Some watershed characteristics, 18 square mile drainage, so it's fairly large for a headwater stream, which cutoff is at 20 square miles. 27% of the watershed's forested, 20% is urban, and then a really low impervious surface rate down there at 4%. Now, how Ohio EPA does their water quality standards is strictly a biological approach. So they have a biocriteria framework. So what that means is they have two metrics for a stream that tells whether it's an attainment for its water quality standards. You have the fish component, which has an IBI or an index of biotic integrity score, and you have a macroinvertebrate component, which are the aquatic bugs that live in the water. And then you have an invertebrate community index for that. We also have standards for physical habitat for streams. So what habitat can a fish live in, and then chemical water quality as well. So those are more to supplement if there is an impairment in your fish or your macroinvertebrates, that what might be the cause. Is it physical or is it chemical? Taking a look at the chart here on the right shows every assessment that's ever been done on Plum Creek, either by the sewer district or by the EPA, and shows a bunch of non-attainments for the stream and every assessment dating back to 1981. So prior to the 90s, the causes of non-attainment or impairment were due to gross organic enrichment, which is poor chemical water quality, basically bad sewage or poor wastewater treatment in the stream. And then moving forward into the early 2000s, the gross organic enrichment was mostly taken care of. And now we have nutrient enrichment, which causes low dissolved oxygen and a bad community of fish and bugs. And then most recently, basically 2014 to present, the causes haven't been anything out of the normal. They just listed as natural sources. So how did we make those water quality improvements? I mean, back from the 80s, in 1983, we started planning more of a regional effort for wastewater collection and treatment. So the organic enrichment portion was really taken care of really in 1997. That's the date when the Southwest Interceptor, which the sewer district owns, operates, and maintains. It's a really big trunk sewer that takes all your local sanitary sewers in your service area, puts it into that one big Southwest Interceptor, and takes it to our southerly plant in Cuyahoga Heights. So with that Southwest Interceptor, it took off 3 wastewater plants, the Brentwood, Western Ohio Utility, and ODOT Park 339. So that right there cut over 500,000 gallons a day of poorly treated wastewater from Plum Creek. There's currently only one treatment plant remaining called the Plum Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant, which has an average design flow of 0.04 million gallons a day. So very minimal compared to our southerly plant, which operates at over 100 million gallons a day. So next, the nutrient enrichment portion is really something that Ohio EPA took. They developed a nutrient-based total maximum daily load in 2001. So they identified the nutrients were a problem. They put a load target on it and really limited what that one little wastewater treatment plant could discharge, made them report it. And then in 2019 and 2020, monitoring from our division in the sewer district demonstrated that Plum Creek is now meeting all the nutrient target criteria that TMDO made. So we've taken care of both organic enrichment and nutrient enrichment at this point. So just taking a look at the overall watershed as a whole, I think is an important step here. So that figure to the left shows a lot of red from the Rocky River, especially in the main stem, Plum Creek, Abram Creek, and even the east and west branch. So that red means that the stream's in non-attainment for their biocriteria. Either the fish or the bugs don't meet it, or both don't meet the water quality standards. And then really the only spots that are in attainment are in the upper reaches. Those are real forested areas, real rural. Moving forward to the center figure here, 1992 to 1997, you really don't see too much improvement. We go from 52% in attainment to 59%, which 1997 is a real cutoff point when we take the Southwest Interceptor to go fully online. The figure on the right here shows what we can do when we get wastewater, treated wastewater out of the watershed, especially from these small package plants that weren't very good at treating wastewater. So that Southwest Interceptor that we had come online 97 actually took 9 total wastewater treatment plants out of commission, and now it's going to the Cuyahoga River watershed, so completely out of the watershed. And you see almost a complete biological recovery, and the whole Rocky River main stem is now blue and full attainment, and the whole west branch and east branch, and most of the tributaries that are in attainment now too. The only ones that you see that are red have some sort of fish barrier or other problems associated with them. So looking at Plum Creek, we first looked there. Now we're looking at the macroinvertebrate communities to see how they're doing, because that's the other half of the metric for water quality standards. These are the aquatic bugs that live in the water. So our mayflies, our caddisflies, midges, and whatnot. So the top left figure here shows the total qualitative taxa. That's our assessment method by year. So we're seeing more taxa per year, especially after 97. So we're seeing more biodiversity, which is a good sign in the stream. The bottom left figure here shows sensitive taxa. Those are fish, or those are bugs that can't live in any type of real hard polluted waters. So we're seeing more of them per year. And then the figure on the right here shows the EPT taxa. Those are mayflies and caddisflies that we collect in the stream. And those are what EPA designates as sensitive groups. So a lot of the taxa within those groups are very sensitive. We're also seeing a lot more of them per year. And actually 5 of the last 6 assessments in Plum Creek for the macroinvertebrate component have been in attainment dating back to 2014. Now switching sides over to the fish community trends. The top left figure here is showing poor to very poor communities in almost every assessment dating back to 81. And when you have poor fish community, it can be due to numerous things. You could have bad water chemistry, which we've shown based on our sampling is not the case here. You can also have bad fish habitat. Fish aren't going to live in a pipe in a culverted stream. So our QHEI is a qualitative habitat evaluation index, which is based on fish metric. So how good is the habitat for these fish? And the figure here to the left shows scores in the good to excellent range for fish habitat throughout almost every site on Plum Creek. The figure here on the right really breaks down the issue in the Rocky River West Branch. The blue dots are IBI scores, so that's your fish metric score based on drainage area. And the blue sites do not have a fish barrier, and the red sites do have a fish barrier. So when that water quality improves, these fish can't make it back up into these small creeks that had wastewater plants and wiped out the fish. So 5 of the 6 impaired sites, these are in the West Branch or tributaries to the West Branch, are impaired because of the fish barriers. Now this is the one that we're dealing with on Plum Creek. This is right at the confluence with the Rocky River West Branch. And this is just the start of a series of cascades that flow down. It's real high gradient, fish that are 5 to 6 inches long at the longest, they're not going to be able to make it up here. So when EPA started designating this as impaired and sources being natural, this is what they mean. If a site is impaired due to natural sources and it's irretrievable, is basically what they're saying. They're quoted as the site or the stream being potentially eligible for an aquatic life use redesignation to a lower water quality goal. So basically it can't meet it by putting any more limitations on pollutants or smart planning efforts. The fish just can't get back up there. So what that would do is it would lower the water quality protection on Plum Creek, specifically dissolved oxygen standards, habitat goals, and ammonia discharges as well.
Hey, Justin, I just have a quick question for you there. So other streams in the service area are also out of attainment. So why did the Ohio EPA propose this in Plum Creek and not in other streams?
Yeah, good question. So Plum Creek has really shown signs of improvement. Our water chemistry has improved greatly. We're not having really any water quality standards exceedances there. And most importantly, the macroinvertebrates are back. So macroinvertebrates, the aquatic bugs, have the ability to hatch. You know, we see the mayfly hatch and the midge hatch on Lake Erie every year. They hatch out of the water, which they spend their midge life or their young life, come out, and they can fly upstream of this barrier and then reproduce up there. So if the stream, when the water quality is good enough for the macroinvertebrates to survive, it theoretically should be good enough for the fish to survive as well. And other streams within the service area, you know, they have other water quality issues, impervious surfaces, intense urbanization, and Plum Creek is really a prime candidate for this project.
Thank you very much.
So when Ohio EPA did their last Rocky River Watershed survey in 2014, the report came out in 2020, and they proposed this project, that a seeding of Upper Plum Creek with a representative collection of headwater fish species from adjacent waters should be considered. And if we are successful with this, it'll contribute to the aquatic life use restoration and eliminate the need to lower its water quality goal. So when Ohio EPA comes back in 2029, which is their next planned assessment, if the fish is not recovered to where the whole stream is in attainment or shows signs of improvement, they will lower that water quality goal. So when they came out with this project, we took a look at it and thought that this project aligned well with their water quality and resource management focus area, and our strategic plan is it identifies opportunities to drive water quality protection and enhancement for Plum Creek and possibly the region. So we've already solved numerous of these water quality issues, taking those wastewater plants online. We have our local separate sewer system evaluation studies going on, which Myring mentioned earlier. It's really just that free fish migration that's preventing it from reaching full biological attainment. So now we have an idea for a project, and we have to start looking at what fish are we going to move. So we did a full literature review and came up with a list of 9 species, and each species had to meet the set of criteria listed here. So first, it had never been collected in Plum Creek before. We don't want to mess with any isolated populations and mix genes up. They're found in abundance in adjacent waters to Plum Creek, and they would have likely migrated back up if connectivity was there. And they have third, they have the ability to increase the IBI score. So the figure here on the right shows the 12 metrics on the left, and then each candidate species across the top. Each plus sign you see is a positive for each of the 12 metrics and what each species can bring to the table. So you see a lot of positives there. These are fish that are going to make an impact right away to the score and hopefully bring it back up into attainment. Their spawning and habitat preferences were available and checked out. I mentioned the qualitative habitat evaluation index. We referenced what we could find in literature for what these fish need to spawn. And then we checked to make sure that habitat was there for these fish to spawn and available. And then lastly, they're just typical species found in other West Branch headwater streams. We didn't want to get too far away from ourselves. These are common fish that should be in a stream with the water quality that's available in Plum Creek. So now we have our species. Now we have to come up with a plan on how we're going to get these fish and where we're going to collect them from. So all fish that we collected and will be collecting are from the Rocky River Watershed, because we didn't want to bring fish from multiple watersheds in. That's, the DNR would never let that. And our goal was to bring a minimum of 200 fish per species per year into Plum Creek. And the table here, or the figure here to the right, shows 2 seed locations. So both within the lower 3 miles. And then we're looking to carry this out for 3 consecutive years and then do another assessment afterwards. So when you do it for 3 years, you're reducing the environmental variability, maybe a bad spawning year, weather year, occurs and you don't get that offspring right away. You're also increasing the genetic diversity, which can decrease lesions, tumors, deformities in the fish, inbreeding really. And then it brings more fish to the party. When you're bringing more fish in there, they have the available habitat and you're concentrating them at these 2 seed locations, your likelihood of a successful spawn and translocation goes up. So all these fish are going to be collected in the spring before they spawn. Again, because you put them there right away with the right habitat, odds are they will spawn right away. Every fish that we plant into Plum Creek will be tagged using a visual implant elastomer, which I'll get to in a minute. And then we're also going to perform a fall sampling each year just to determine survivability if we're catching any without a tag and see what the community looks like every fall. So as I mentioned, the tagging, this is what we're using. It's called a visual implant elastomer. It's basically a 2-part epoxy mix that we mix up, put into an insulin syringe, and then we're going to inject these fish right underneath their skin so it's still visible. So the benefits of doing this is we can color code it by year. So 2021 is going to get the hot pink color. It's probably the easiest one to see, and it's good for us to start out with the project. So when we color code them by year and we look down 4 or 5 years down the road, we can determine if there's any of these fish still alive and how the survivability is in the stream based on this tag. We can also determine recruitment or successful spawn. So each fish that we collect without one of these tags that is one of the species that we put in here, since they have never been collected in the stream ever, we're going to document those as offspring of the ones that we put in. And then we can also document movement throughout the stream. You know, fish move naturally throughout the streams, and we can determine which sea location, because the upstream one, say, gets tagged on the right side of their body, the downstream site gets tagged on the left side. We can determine movement throughout the stream, which is a good sign. So as for progress, all of our planning occurred really over the winter time so we could get this started this year. We really didn't know if we were going to start this year, but we were able to get it all done. And we started this March. We started in March because that's when the darters begin to spawn. We wanted to get them into Plum Creek right away. And a lot of this project, we had a lot of help from other partner agencies. So Brian Zimmerman, he's shown in the picture here with the white bucket. He's from the Ohio State University Museum of Biological Diversity, and he's also a co-author of one of the new Naturalist Guide to Fishes of Ohio book. He was a big help with this project. He's done some of these tagging and translocation projects before, but they're mostly with species that are threatened and they're trying to expand their native range. And then we also had approval and support from Ohio EPA, Ecological Assessment Section, who proposed the project, Division of Wildlife, and Cleveland Metro Parks as well.
Hey, Justin, it's Myron again. Hey, were there permits that you had to get to relocate these fish? I know you kind of mentioned it earlier that you can't just move fish from back and forth because of the fact that they may have parasites or other invasive species in the water.
Yeah, exactly. So we had to get numerous permits to do this project. One, we have a scientific collector's permit, which we use every year to conduct our electrofishing, our bioassessments. And then for this project specifically, we have a full study plan that outlines everything we're going to do, which was submitted to the Division of Wildlife. And they approved everything, collect them from within the Rocky River watershed. No fish can show any adverse signs of deformities, tumors. We don't want to bring any diseases throughout the watershed. And then the metro parks as well. We sent the study plan to them, and they gave us permission to sample from within the Rocky River Reservation to get the fish. Since the Rocky River is a very healthy stream, they have plenty of fish in there of the species we're looking for. We could use that as a source location to bring them up into Plum Creek. But this is not something that just anybody can do. This is a very technical report to make this happen.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. So as for progress, I think we spent 11 or 12 field days, full field days out collecting, looking for these 9 species. You know, we weren't able to get our 200 fish per each, or we met it on 6 of the 9 species, but we didn't get them all. Some of these fish we just They're really hard to catch. They're faster than us apparently. But we did reach a real good goal for year one. So as of May 13th, 3,367 fish were collected, tagged, and translocated into Plum Creek, which to the right here, you see the fish with the pink stripes. That's their tag. They're swimming around doing fine. And then that's our first translocation over here on the Plum Creek. So bringing this back to our overall goals and the mission of this project. Our goal is to achieve full biological attainment in Plum Creek, which has never happened before. If we're able to do this, we can eliminate the need for an aquatic life use redesignation to a lower water quality goal. So the figure over here to the right takes our last assessment back in September of 2020. We're just taking the community that we collected then, and then we're going to add the 9 species at typical numbers that are found in headwater streams. Then we ran a new score. So we're able to bring the IBI score, which is our fish component metric, from a 22, which is poor, up to a 46, which is very good, well above that attainment threshold. We shot a little high. We're hoping they all stick, but realistically they may not. So if we're even able to score a 40 on this IBI metric, if you look on the table here to the left, our ICI score, which is the macroinvertebrate community component, is a 34, already in attainment. And those two scores together would bring Plum Creek into attainment for the first time. And we're able to enhance that water quality and hopefully drive water quality protection in Plum Creek for years to come. So as I mentioned, Plum Creek's kind of the pilot project for this. Ohio EPA is excited to hear how this goes because they can implement this more at a statewide level. But just looking at in our service area, what other areas have fish barriers that limit what the stream can perform at? Well, Blodgett Creek is a good example here. It's not that big of a waterfall, but that's a big leap for a 4-inch minnow. I don't know if they'd be able to make it over there, and EPA even specified in the report that the community was much different upstream than downstream of this barrier. Big Creek at John Nagy, that used to be a giant dam at I believe like close to 20 foot. That's now a cascade. It'll be interesting to see if fish can make it up there. And then Abram Creek has other multiple fish barriers. We have a low head dam, a energy dissipating drop structure, and then the airport enclosure. So we're going to see how this works on Plum Creek, and then 3-4 years down the road, if we're successful, we're looking to expand this to try to bring other streams into attainment within our service area. So here's us on a spring day on the Rocky River West Branch, really learning how to do this translocation. This has been a fun project. The benefits are high and the costs are low, so we're hoping that we can see some success here in the next year or two. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this project?
I do not see any posted, Justin.
Well, I'm going to hand it off to George Remius, Manager of Stormwater Strategic Support then. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm here to talk about 2 different topics. The first one is we've mentioned in the past our urgent storm event response, and probably talked a little bit more about the steps involved. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we use some of the data to do some analysis pre, during, and post, and how that supports some of our field response. And then I'm also going to be talking about how we support some of the analysis to look into local system issues and how we explore potential regional benefits. Next slide, please. All right, so we use a collection of different types of data when we're either tracking a storm before it hits, when it's occurring, or after it's passed, to help us understand where we are going for a field response, or equally important, where to prioritize where we would go first. So different data types that we collect, there's rainfall. We both have just our own district rain gauges, and then we also have a contract with the vendor to provide us some gauge adjusted radar rainfall. And I'll be talking a little bit more about both of those in the following slides. The picture on the right just kind of gives you an example of the coverage of our both the district rain gauges, which are the blue raindrops, as well as the coverage area of that GAR data set. That's kind of what we refer the gauge adjusted radar rainfall. And it covers not only our service area, but areas that drain into it as well. We also have a collection of different level sensors and flow monitors, both district as well as external, including USGS. We'll be also talking a little bit about that and how we monitor those for different flood stages to identify where flooding may be occurring and how severe it is. And then we also have a series of trail cams that we have installed to collect photos to help us better understand where flooding, debris, or erosion occurs. Next slide, please. So regarding the district rain gauges, we currently have 40 rain gauges. We just installed our 40th over at the Westerly treatment plant earlier this year. And they collect 5-minute time step data. And so they cover all the different tips that occur for the rainfall. And we're able to pull all that data in and take a look at it and quickly identify where there's either high intensity rainfall, which I refer to as rainfall that is occurring with over an inch in an hour, or heavy rainfall, which I kind of like to define as something that's more than 2 inches within a 24-hour period. And so when we pull all that rainfall data from our different rain gauges, we compare them to 2 recurrence interval published values. There's a Huff and Angel series, the Rainfall Frequency Atlas of the Midwest, which was published in 1990. It's got looks at different time intervals from the 5-minute to 48-hour, which you kind of see the columns listed there in the table on the left. And we compare the recorded rainfall amounts from the 2-month to the 100-year from the Huff and Angel. In addition, the NOAA Atlas 14 values were published in 2004. And for the same durations, it also published values from the 1 year to 1,000 years. So we used the 2-month, the 9-month values from the Huff and Angel and the 1 year to 1,000 year from the NOAA Atlas 14 to identify where there's either high intensity rainfall or heavy rainfall. So the example here on the left was for a recent storm event. You can see the West Lake, which is each of those rows represent one of the district rain gauges, and the West Lake rain gauge on the far bottom indicated while the peak intensity for the shorter duration wasn't all that significant, there was some heavy rainfall that matched up to the 5-year, 24-hour period of time. And so this would be an indication where we might have had some heavy rainfall on the upper northwest part of our service area and use that as a guide. The figure on the right shows the same rainfall, but now it's more of a cumulative rainfall total. And we kind of use that to compare to the 24-hour periods just to get a sense of how the storm actually occurred in the service area. And you can see on this example, the Westlake rain gauge shows that it exceeded that 5-year 24-hour and gives you a sense of how close it was to the 10-year, followed by some of the other rain gauges in their cumulative totals as well. Next slide, please. So in addition to the district rain gauges, this gauge adjusted radar rainfall we collect, and we've been collecting this since 2016, is about 1,300 square miles, which is significantly larger than our stormwater service area. And the intent of that was to make sure we understood the rainfall that might be influencing the regional system coming in to our stormwater service area. So those larger watersheds like the Rocky River, Chagrin River, the Cuyahoga River, much bigger drainage areas. So getting the understanding of what kind of rainfall occurred there also helps us understand what might be occurring in the regional system. We use the same type of analysis that I mentioned before, the rain gauges, to identify high intensity and heavy rainfall within the area and figure out how this might give us an indication where flooding is occurring or a field response. This figure here on the right shows the July 12th, 2021 event for the same recurrence intervals, but for the peak 30-minute time step. And you can kind of see there's a little section on the western end with the orange indicating more of a high intensity rain event. And that just so happened to be in the same sub-watershed Justin just told you about in Plum Creek. And we also, as part of this, have a USGS monitor in Plum Creek. And that's what you see in that figure in the upper left that indicates how high the water got. In there, you can see it reached the flood stage, and that was an indication for us to go conduct a field response just to see the extent of flooding and if there's anything else we might need to do with our maintenance contractor. Next slide, please. So the monitors that we have, and there's nearly 80 monitors now that we have installed throughout the service area. We have roughly a little over 30 of those are district or USGS stream monitors. We have a few dozen of district monitors that are installed as well. And then we also have a contract with an outside vendor who's installing some additional monitors. So a total of 80 of these. And one of the things that I really like is how the National Weather Service for some of the USGS stream monitors have defined 4 different types of flood stages. There's the action stage, the minor flooding stage, the moderate flooding stage, and the major flooding stage. Action kind of indicates that the water is about to get out of a stream. Minor flooding kind of indicates that a local road has been overtopped. Moderate flooding generally indicates the road may be impassable and there may be some homes that are inundated. And then major flooding really indicates a series of roads and perhaps an entire neighborhood that's underwater. And we're trying to define those stages for all of those monitors that we have in the service area. And you have an example here on the right of the different monitors that currently have all of those flood stages defined where they exist. And so we're able to pull up that data, quickly identify both what is the current stage when we downloaded the data, as well as what was the peak stage during that storm event to identify where flooding may occur. And the higher the flood stage would give us a priority to respond to that area first. This example here indicates that a couple of the USGS monitors were at an action stage, but many of them were below action. So we would have prioritized going to those monitors that had the action or higher flood stage. Next slide, please. The trail cams that we have installed throughout the service area, we installed those to kind of support both being able to understand in remote areas what's going on and prioritizing those where it's either flood prone, debris prone, or in other cases, some type of stream erosion. The picture that you see on your left here, this is where the airport debris rack is located. And it is a debris issue, debris prone issue, and it's something that we actually use quite frequently. The example here, you can see that the water actually exceeded the debris rack, started overtopping it, and you can see the debris that was piling up behind it. This example gives us a quick indication that we're going to let the water recede and then send a debris contractor out there to remove that. Picture on the right is a trail cam looking at our Lakeview Dam. And you can see the water had receded, but it also gives you a good indication of how high the debris did get for that particular storm event, which was just less than a month ago. And this was an example that we would send out a contractor to go clear that debris as well. Next slide. So in addition to those different types of data types that we're collecting, whether it's the monitors, the rain gauges, trail cams, as we work with our group, the swim group, who does a great job responding and going out in the field to better understand what's going on, we're also compiling any customer or media reports of flooding to help us figure out where to go for a field response. And based upon those field observations, reports, sediment debris accumulation, we like to conduct some post-storm event analysis. The rainfall statistics, as I mentioned before, trying to understand what kind of rainfall occurred. Some of comparing then that storm event to the stormwater models I'll be talking a little bit about what they predicted to flood versus what was actual flooding to see if there's a good calibration of that alignment. And then also just compiling some of these important key factors of trying to look at those historical storms and seeing if there's a correlation between certain storm events leading to flooding or certain storm events leading to debris accumulation. Next slide. So the next topic I was going to cover today has to do with how we're taking those stormwater models we've completed through our master plans and start both using them, but also extending them into the local system to support some of our local flooding issues that we're learning more about. So we've completed or near completing all of our stormwater master plans. And from that, we have over 40 different stormwater models that we have to represent both existing conditions and recommended projects. And one of my positions responsibilities is to manage all those, to keep those up to date, both existing conditions and our projects as we go from development to construction. And so the figure on the right gives you an example of the different coverages of those stormwater models. And you can see it's a wide coverage area. There's a part there in the middle with the black boundary that kind of indicates the interaction between our stormwater models and the combined sewer models, since much of that area has a combined sewer model as well. But these models are available for people to use. To simply request it, we can provide you a copy of it. And then if you're going to do additional detail with it, we ask if you can provide it back, since we're always trying to reflect the best available data. And there's times where communities request assistance to help with some of their local flooding issues, and that's kind of the topic of today. And I'm going to give an example of what we're doing right now with the city of Brook Park. But we've assisted other communities like Seven Hills and North Royalton with similar requests. Next slide. So the current example here is more related to the city of Brook Park and how we're working with them in an area known as the Coleta Ditch. This is an area in the city of Brook Park, which was heavily developed back in the 50s and 60s. And nearly 4 square miles, almost more than half of that is impervious. And during that time, as you'll see, very few stormwater control measures exist. Many of those storm sewers that were built in that time still exist. And in this, one of the challenges here as well is many of those storm sewers are in a common trench, which in this area means that both the sanitary sewer and the storm sewer are in the same trench. And compared to today's standards, some of those pipes are undersized compared to what we would normally size them for with today's standards. Next slide. So this example, the picture on the left, shows you just kind of what the city of Brook Park looked like at that time, prior to a lot of this development. This was in 1951. You can see most of the area was undeveloped. The blue lines indicate kind of the model extents that we had from the master plan. And then you can see on the picture on the right, less than 2 decades later, most of this area was fully developed. You can see the different streets, the different homes, all the different businesses were built in that time. So it was a very rapid period of time of development. Next slide. Now, the challenge with all that development back in that time was there were very few stormwater management regulations that existed. If you compare the population of Ohio compared to the stormwater management requirements at the time, the pipe capacity was smaller. There were very few, if any, floodplain regulations that existed, and similarly, very few stormwater control measures that were required. But as you can tell, 1980 was beginning of adding some of those additional requirements, whether it's from FEMA, stream setbacks, adding either flood control or water quality volume stormwater control measures. A very small percentage of Ohio's population has expanded since then. So most of the infrastructure that was built to support our population has this similar scenario. So it's just one of the challenges we have here across Northeast Ohio, not just in the city of Brook Park. Next slide. So going back to the city of Brook Park, taking a look at what they were asking for, they had a couple of local stormwater control measures they wanted to install. And to see what benefits there would be of that, we quickly realized with our existing model that we needed to extend it into the local system to understand their benefits, but also to understand the tailwater influence here, because it's a very flat area, very impervious area, poor drainage soils. And there was a lot of options on not only evaluating those, but the city was also interested in other ideas. So as a result, we decided to do a significant extension into the model, which you'll see here, to make sure that we can fully understand at a catch basin level and at a parcel level for the non-residential properties, where are there potential problems and where are there potential opportunities. The table there on the right kind of shows you the number of catchments that the model had, the hydrologic catchments that is, compared to what the updated model included. So we went from 76 to a little over 1,000. The average catchment size, which was very good for the master plan of 33 acres, was reduced down to 2.5. Once again, to help us understand loading at the catch basin level or at the parcel non-residential level. And then the modeled pipes went from roughly 50,000 lineal feet to nearly 250,000. Next slide. So the picture on the left gives you an idea of the catchment delineation from the master plan. The picture on the right shows you the updated catchment boundaries and level of detail. Next slide. Picture on the left shows you the model extents from the original master plan. And the picture on the right shows you the model extents with this recent update. And this was, we were able to do this model extension because number one, the city had very good records of these drawings. And as we found out opportunities that looked like there may be a gap, the city was able to find that and support that. So they were very cooperative with not only providing us the information, but opening the ideas of what types of solutions we can do. Next slide. So where we're at right now is, as I mentioned before, poor drainage soils, very flat, very impervious, very few stormwater control measures. It looks like the stormwater control measures may be the best type of solution here. So we're looking at 3 types. One, the normal conventional inline, but in order for that to happen, you have to have a good change in the elevation of the basin so you can allow that ponding without impacting the upstream storm sewers. We're also looking at some offline basins, but in order to do that, you want to have enough area that you can divert that flow. And with a fully developed area, as you would expect, there's some challenges for finding that. And then where I think we might have the most benefit, but it also might be more complicated and more expensive, are some decentralized underground storage of bioswales. So looking at some of those impervious areas, whether it's in the public right of way or on these more commercial sites, providing some inline, or I should say on-site detention. So we'll see where that's going to lead us, but we're at the point right now where we've got a few different level monitors installed, using that with the GAR data and our field responses to help calibrate the model. And then we're going to explore not only the type of problems that exist here throughout the community, but how some of these ideal solutions might benefit the local issues, but as well as benefit on the regional system. Next slide. So that's the end of the presentation. Let me know if there are any questions.
I do not see any, George.
Okay. Well, with that being said, then I'll hand the presentation over to Mike Blair to give you an update on the Rocky River master planning.
All right, thank you, George, and thanks everybody for joining us today. Yeah, if we could have the next slide, please. So the good news is, to give you an overall view of where we are with the master plans, is that, as Frank alluded to in the early part of our presentation, we're wrapping them up. In fact, we've already completed 3 of the 4 master plans that the sewer district was planning on completing. Those include the Cuyahoga River South, the Cuyahoga River North. We completed the Rocky River master plan back in November of 2020. Since that time, we've provided community reports to each of our community members. So all of you should have a copy of that community report for your reference. If not, please feel free to reach out to either myself or to your Watershed team leader, Myron Borchards, and we'd be happy to get that over to you and also to answer any questions that you might have. The last master plan, the Chagrin River and Lake Erie Direct Tribs Stormwater Master Plan, basically we've essentially completed the master plan. We're just in the process right now of finalizing the reports, getting the community reports together, and then having our final meetings with each of the community members themselves. So we're about 98% complete at this point of time. Next slide. So The next slide we want to show you is basically from the Rocky River Stormwater Master Plan. What we found out is that we've got about 71 problem areas within this watershed and within our service area. And then we have an additional 50 standalone projects. These are like single BTU areas where we either have erosion, inundation concerns, or water quality concerns. So basically we have a total of about 121 project areas within the subwatershed. Our estimates are to basically complete these 121 projects. We're looking at over $275 million to trying to address all these areas. So we have quite a bit of work and to address at this time, and with a big price tag. When you compare that to the overall master plan study that we're doing in all 4 areas, we're estimating at this time that we're going to be looking at about $1.5 billion worth of work in the 4 service areas that we're either going to be trying to address alone, in collaboration with our community members, or with other stakeholders. Now, most of these, basically all the projects that have been identified within the Rocky River Stormwater subwatershed, we have taken all those projects, we have nominated all those projects and have prioritized them as of last year. So they're basically being queued up into our system so we can start selecting these projects and start either identifying stakeholders or other partners who we could work with on these projects, or which projects that we're going to take up on our own and start getting them into either design or construction, design or in construction. If we go to the next slide. Now there's some projects that we've identified where, because of their size and such, oops, I'm sorry, I got a little bit ahead of myself. One of the things I wanted definitely to talk to you about are some of the projects that actually we are in a design or construction mode right now within the Rocky River Stormwater subwatershed. So one of the first ones that we're working on with our partners, the City of Millbrook Heights, is the Abram Creek Detention Basin site, which is near the Big Creek Parkway. Basically, this is a collaboration we're doing with the city where we're trying to upgrade the level of service in that area from less than the 5-year level of service and bring it up to the 10-year level of service. Basically, the City of Millbrook Heights is using their cost share money to purchase property where these 3 basins are going to be located. And then we're providing monies as well to pay for the design and eventually the construction of these 3 basins for this particular project. So right now we're at about 30% design for basin number 3. And we expect basin number 3 and hopefully basin number 2 to actually go to construction the middle part of next year. The next project on the list is Cleveland Hawkins debris rack. Right now, we're basically finalizing the design on that debris rack, and we're working with our partners, Cleveland Hopkins Airport, Homeland Security, and others as far as how we're going to coordinate the getting access to install this debris rack, and also the follow-on operations and maintenance of that rack itself. After that, we have the Sheldon Road Bridge replacement over in Brook Park and Millbrook Heights. And basically this one, we're basically coordinating with both the cities and the county on basically identifying funding for this particular project so we can eventually start taking that to design and eventually construction. The next project, Route 82, the culvert replacement, that was a project that was identified in the master plan and also was identified by the city of Strongsville when they did their inspections as well, kind of on the same track. We worked with the city of Strongsville to help pay for this project. And I believe it was during the summer of this year, they've completed the construction work of that culvert. And then finally at this time, we had the Baldwin Creek Relief Storm Sewer Project at Storms Drive in Parma. Right now, this is at about the 50% design completion stage, and our design and construction folks will be talking a little bit more about this later in this presentation. And one of the things I also wanted to bring up is, in addition to these projects, we're also trying to look at opportunities where we could try and advance these projects as well. And one of those is by basically watching when properties might become available for either easements or especially for property acquisition that relate to a particular problem area. So for example, one of those, we have a problem area in Homestead Township where we were able to discover that a 14-acre property was going to be put up for sale. This was actually identified as a key element of that alternative to address that problem area. And as of last week, we have purchased that property and we're holding that in place so that when the design is ready, we can start enacting that property and putting it towards construction. Next slide. Now we do, as I kind of alluded to earlier, we do have some projects that are identified in the stormwater master plan that have some potential need for doing some advanced planning. And these are projects basically that are going to require to getting either some additional information to understand the full RSS impacts of the problem. These projects might be cost prohibitive where they might be too large of a bill for one project. So we want to basically see, can we break these projects down into various phases that are more economical and allow us to move forward with that. And then also we're trying to have look at these projects where we have multiple either acquisitions and or easement procurement requirements, and basically seeing how we can potentially break that down and make it easier for these projects to move forward. So we currently have an advanced planning contract that started in 2020. It's actually getting ready to wrap up this fall, and we've already started putting together a second contract that'll be starting up later this fall as well. So if we can go to the next slide, what I want to do is show you an example of one of the advanced planning projects that we're working on. What you see here is Plum Creek problem area number 6, which is located in the city of Parma, right where Tri-C West is located and at the York and West Pleasant Valley intersection. This was identified in the master plan as having severe issues of inundation, a little bit of erosion, and some concerns about some of the infrastructure around this area. As part of this, we're looking at about 49 buildings that are impacted by this problem area, 7 transportation assets, and 3 crossings. And in total, we're looking at about $11 million project that you're seeing on this slide right here. So when we took a look at this, we have a very large project in terms of area, in terms of budgets. We have a lot of different stakeholders who are involved as well. For example, in this particular one, this is going to have impact on the Parma City School District, the Cleveland Catholic Diocese, the city of Parma itself, the county, and then also various private stakeholders. So what we did in this advanced stormwater planning phase is we gave this project to our ASP contractor. And if you go to the next slide here, basically what we were able to do is break that down into 4 more manageable projects. So for the first phase in this example will be in the upper right-hand column where we're looking at doing the construction of some stormwater basins to help us control some of the conveyance issues. Project B would be expanding the floodplain to the southwest of the York and West Pleasant Valley intersection, and also adding a culvert underneath York Road to feed into this expansion area. That would be done as part of Project C. And then finally, the 4th phase, Project D, would be purchasing some homes that would be particularly impacted by the inundation going on and trying to do improvements and upgrading of several culverts or crossings that are contributing to the inundation in this area. So this just gives you a prime example of some of the advanced planning that we're doing following up on the master plans. Next slide. So in addition to all this work, one of the things we have is a lot of data that has come out of these various master plans. And I wanted to let you know, all of you let you know that basically all this information is available for your use. So for example, we've basically done a lot of CCTV work and put together PAC reports for all the culverted streams within the various stormwater study areas. That information is available to yourselves. We've done the spherical imagery of all the open stream segments. Basically, this is the same as Google Street View, but instead we're looking at the streams themselves. That might be interesting to you as far as seeing how the streams relate to various nearby buildings or transportation assets. We also have a very good inventory of all the RSS crossings in this study area. And as George alluded to as well, is that we actually have swim models of all the watersheds that we've done within the stormwater master plans. And these are available to you. All you have to do right now is just call myself or reach out to Myring, and we can work and get these models to you. Eventually, what we're going to try and do is basically develop an app so that you can actually go onto our website and use this app to be able to select the swim model that you need, identify some of the supporting information that you might need. So hopefully we can properly support the projects that you have going on in each of your communities. So with that, if we go to the next slide. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to present the status of the stormwater master plans, and just check to see if anybody has any questions.
I do not see any posted, Mike.
Alrighty, no worries. Well, again, thank you everybody for your time. And what I'd like to do next is pass the presentation over to our stormwater inspection and maintenance group, which is represented by Christina Salina. And Christine, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mike. I'm Christina, and I'll try to keep it quick because I know we're getting low on time. So we're just going to go through our inspection and maintenance updates, and then I'll talk a little bit about our demolition services. Next. Yeah, there you go. So first we'll start with inspections. You can go to the next slide. So this year we've completed 257 total inspections in the Rocky River and Black River watersheds. That Black River piece is French Creek in Olmsted Township. So that just gets lumped in with the Rocky. So 80 of those total inspections we refer to as responsible party benchmark inspections. So these are inspections that are completed by other agencies. It could be ODOT, the county, the metro parks, the turnpike, or railroads. And so we are using inspection reports that are already available and updating our inspections where those updates are needed. Just to highlight a couple of our inspections. This is a culvert on Baldwin Creek in North Royalton. As you can see on the photo on the left, there is a failure in the pipe. So this is actually where a local tap-in is punched through the side. We've been looking at this pipe for 5 or 6 years now, and so just recently over the summer, the pipe did fail at this location. And so the city alerted us to a sinkhole that they found on top in this location. And the city coned off the area for safety purposes and backfilled the hole. And then we performed an inspection and confirmed that the pipe had failed. So you can see the backfill infiltrating there. This pipe has other numerous defects. You can see the picture on the right. The invert is essentially missing through multiple locations through the pipe. There are also deformations. So we're going to keep an eye on the failure quarterly. We're going to make sure that it's not getting worse. And then this culvert is also on our list of culverts that are in need of repair, and it's being prioritized with all of those other culverts in our area. So this is a location on Blodgett Creek in Strongsville. We're looking at the bank. This is another location that we have been monitoring twice a year for a few years now, because there is a home in pretty close proximity. It's about 12 feet from the top of this bank, which is about 10 feet high. So over the years, we really didn't notice any change in the condition of this bank. You can see that, even it is eroding, but not at a noticeable pace. But recently, this past summer, there was a slough that occurred. So they lost a chunk of the bank. So what we did was installed some bank pins, and we are going to monitor those twice a year so we can track the rate of erosion and just monitor and make sure that it isn't, putting anybody's safety at risk or impacting the home. Just a quick update on our maintenance from this year. We have performed a total of 45 maintenance projects, most of those being sediment and debris removals. So we've removed a total of 1,870 cubic yards of material from the Rocky River watershed. We have had 3 other projects. So one of those was a culvert daylighting and floodplain reconnection, and another was jetting of a culverted stream. It was about 800 feet of culvert that we jetted. It was a 15-inch diameter pipe. Just one example of a maintenance project that we completed. This is on Baker Creek in Strongsville. During a routine inspection, we found this debris blockage. There's about 4 cubic yards of woody material accumulated on this local utility lateral. So you can see before and after pictures there. We're able to get the debris removed and keep the stream flowing and make sure that utility line didn't become damaged. So I wanted to give an update on our demolition services. A pretty key part of our regional stormwater management program is acquiring properties for implementing our stormwater projects. And most of these properties have some type of structure on them that needs to be removed prior to completing the stormwater project. So at the start of the stormwater management program, demolition services were being completed by the Cleveland Land Bank. In 2020, the swim group took over the property demolition program, and we developed a contracting program for asbestos survey, abatement, and demo services. So these pictures show a home in Pepper Pike on Gates Mills Boulevard being removed. So this was a 2-year contract that was awarded, and we also awarded a separate asbestos survey contract. So we began these in the spring. They were awarded, and removal has been prioritized based on how long the site has been vacant and project timeline. So when that parcel is needed for the stormwater project to move forward. So these photos show a demolition of a home at Forest Overlook in Seven Hills. The home was in pretty close proximity to an eroding bank, and it's a key piece of a planned stormwater project. So the home, the foundation, and the driveway were removed. And so far this year, we have removed 4 homes, and there are 3 currently being planned. And with that, if there are any questions. And if not, I will. Okay. Well, I will pass it on to Janet Popielski, our stormwater program manager. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Christina. So yeah, I'm Janet Popielski. I'm the Stormwater Program Manager. So I oversee the design, construction, as well as the inspection and maintenance group. So it's always good to watch the SWIM presentation, see all the great work that they've done. And there's always overlap between what SWIM has been doing and what design and construction is going to be doing. So for example, with those demolitions, that last area, we are going to be kicking off the design for stream restoration in that part of Seven Hills. So it's always nice to see those. So going into some of the design projects that we are currently working on in stormwater, we do have over 25 projects in various stages of design. Those could be in procurement, they could be in active design or heading into construction. And so this is one of the projects that we've been focused on. This is Baldwin Creek in Parma along Storms Drive. I think Mike mentioned this during his presentation as well. This is an area that has experienced repetitive flooding over the years. There's a basin upstream of the neighborhood that floods. But more importantly here, Baldwin Creek was put into a culvert that winds through the neighborhood. And the culvert is undersized. And so through the master plan, one of the things that was recognized was the need to upsize or to install a relief culvert to give the stream a shorter path to get back to the creek and to increase that capacity. So this project has been under design for a little while. All the work will be performed within the public right of way, and it will also require some relocation of some other existing utilities. And then the second phase of this project will then be to actually expand the basin upstream of the area. It's called the Bonnie Banks Basin. So we'll be kicking off design of that expansion in 2022 to get this neighborhood to a full level of service that we are targeting. So again, $1.7 million and anticipating construction in first quarter of 2022. So for the next project, the Big Creek flood reduction near Sprague Road in the cities of North Royalton and Parma. So for this project, this area has been experiencing flooding, both the roadway and some homes. There was also some sections of culvert kind of winding around two homes on the corner of Sprague and Thornhurst. So we are partnering with the communities to upsize the crossing under Sprague Road to address that roadway flooding. And then we did purchase two homes on the corner of Sprague and Thornhurst, and we demolished those homes and we're realigning the creek, removing some of the culverts, so daylighting some sections of stream, and then expanding the floodplain to add some additional storage to this section of Big Creek. This project is estimated at $940,000. And again, we're anticipating the construction NTP early next year. So next project, the Pepperloose Creek Culvert Replacement and Rehabilitation in Gates Mills Boulevard is a project that we've been working on for a number of years. Again, this is another flood-related project. And some of you may have noticed that as our program has progressed and as the stormwater master plans have been closing out, we have been shifting over to a lot more flood-related projects. And that's because we're getting the findings from the master plans, which help us determine how to resolve these flooding problems. So this project had started up actually quite a while ago because of the systemic issue of the flooding and the presence of a detention basin again in the area. So it's in between Gates Mills Boulevard. Gates Mills Boulevard is split in this area, and the detention basin's right in the center and is city owned. So we'll be expanding that detention basin. And then we'll also be rehabilitating and replacing failing culverts that were mostly put in by private property owners. So this project is estimated at $2.2 million, and we're looking to kick it off in the second quarter of next year. One thing to note on this project is that we have partnered with the city again to utilize some of their community cost share to rehabilitate a culvert upstream of the project location. So it's their culvert, but we'll be working in the area. So if we put it into the scope of our project to do that rehabilitation, And that way they can have that cost savings to them of not having to mobilize a contractor out to the site at a later date. And they're using their community cost share in order to expand the scope of the project. Next slide. So another result of the stormwater master plans is that we have now evaluated all the sections of culverted stream within our service area. It's over 80 miles of culverted streams. So a lot of these sections had never been looked at. A lot of them are on private property. But now we have a good idea of what the condition is and what needs to be done in these areas. So we've decided to start to implement culverted stream packages every year. We're allocating approximately $1.5 million a year in construction costs to rehabilitating, removing, or replacing culverted streams throughout the service area. And the first package that we're working on is this one in Mill Creek and Garfield Heights. This is a combination of rehabilitation, probably some relining, and even some daylighting that we're looking at. In some instances, what we're finding is that these culverts were put in on properties, maybe they intended to build on it, maybe they were just filling in a ravine, but we do come across instances where it doesn't seem to make sense to keep the culvert any longer, and if it's in poor condition, we are looking at the alternative of actually daylighting that section instead of rehabbing or replacing it. So again, this project just recently kicked off. We're looking at a construction NTP probably in early 2023 as we work through the alternatives for all the different sections of this. And again, annually, we're looking at approximately 1.5 million in construction budget associated with culverted streams. We're going to be daylighting, rehabbing, replacing. We'll be looking at culverted streams on private property, culverted streams possibly within easements. If it is city-owned, we'll be looking to possibly cost share on some things. The pictures that you see are two examples of privately owned culverts. And what we're finding is a lot of variation in how those were constructed. The picture on the lower left is actually a culvert that was truly just a shipping container that somebody put into the ravine and then backfilled over top of. And over the years, that shipping container had been degrading and starting to fall in and blocking the stream. So we've actually gone in and removed sections of the top of that shipping container. And then the picture on the right is a culvert in Brook Park that was also constructed with some questionable means, and the top of the culvert has been slowly deteriorating and falling into the culvert. So every year you'll be seeing some of these packages come out from us. Next slide. And I'm going to skip this slide real quick, and we're going to go right into construction, unless Keith, you do see any questions that have popped up.
I have not.
Okay, so we're in the home stretch here on this Friday afternoon. So just a couple of construction projects that we recently completed. This one is the Rocky River Tributary Stabilization and Realignment along Ridge Road in the city of North Royalton. And what I'd like to highlight for you on this project is that you can see in the picture on the lower left, the before picture, how close the stream was getting to the roadway. It was actually into the guardrail, and you could see the posts from the guardrail were starting to fall in. One thing that we decided to do for this project was we really wanted to make sure that we were taking the stream function into consideration when we went into the design. And so we worked very closely with the city and with property owners to get easements outside of the roadway right of way so that we could actually move the stream over, move it away from the road, as opposed to doing something like a soldier pile wall or driving sheet pile in. We really wanted to maintain and improve stream function through the area. And so you can see the end result there in the after photos. This project was just completed. It was actually completed earlier in the year, but we delay calling substantial completion on our projects until we can go through a full growing season so that we can see how the vegetation is all taking hold. Because in projects like this, the vegetation is so critical to the success of the project. And next slide. And the last project that I'll highlight is another one in on Pepperloose Creek in Pepper Pike. This was another stabilization project through a residential area where the stream was just in extremely poor condition. There were failing gabion baskets, failing crossing, just small crossings that people had built over the stream, eroding towards homes and septic systems. And so this is another example of where we did actually buy a home, demolished it, and then realigned the stream in order to give it a better gradient, expand the floodplain, and slow the flows down, and just really look to restore some good stream function to this section of the regional system. And with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I do not see any, Janet.
Okay, thank you very much and have a good weekend, everybody.
Janet, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all our attendees and our presenters. It was great seeing you all. I hope you got quite a bit of good information out of our presentation. I just want to finish off our Friday afternoon by congratulating Mr. Frank Greenland on his Lifetime Achievement Award that he received earlier this month from the district for 33 years of service to our region. I also want to say thank you to Mark Link, manager for Stormwater Inspection and Maintenance Department. He has decided to retire at the end of the year. Mark, we really want to thank you for all the great work that you have done over the last 11 years on the stormwater program, and you know, the guidance you've given us in the stormwater maintenance and inspection department. We wish you a happy retirement, and again, thank you for your service. With that, I would like to conclude today's Watershed Advisory Committee meeting. We will be sending you out the dates for our next meeting, which will be in March of 2022, and we will also be sending you a link to the recording of this presentation. As always, we log these on our website, so if you want to ever go back to our previous Watershed Advisory meetings, please visit neorsd.org. And with that, have a lovely weekend. Thank you, everybody.